Sarah Thompson, a 41-year-old single mother, lived in a cozy yet slightly worn-out house at the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood. The house had been her haven for years, a place where she and her teenage daughter, Emily, built memories. But tonight, the house felt different. Emily was away at a weekend school camp, leaving Sarah home alone for the first time in years. It was a Friday evening in late October. The wind howled outside, carrying the chill of the approaching winter. Sarah sat on the couch, wrapped in a soft blanket, sipping her favorite chamomile tea. She had planned a peaceful evening, watching her favorite shows and indulging in a bit of reading before bed. But as the night deepened, an uneasy feeling began to creep over her. At first, she brushed it off as nothing more than the natural anxiety of being home alone. She was a practical woman, not prone to fear or superstition. But the silence in the house was unnerving, almost too silent. Every creak and groan of the old house seemed amplified, echoing through the empty rooms. As Sarah tried to focus on the TV, she noticed a strange flickering in the corner of her eye. The lamp beside the couch dimmed and brightened erratically. Frowning, she reached out to steady the cord, thinking it might be loose, but the flickering stopped as soon as she touched it. She shrugged it off as an electrical glitch and continued watching her show. Half an hour later, the same thing happened again, only this time, it wasn't just the lamp. The TV screen flickered, and the lights in the kitchen started to blink. Sarah's heart began to race, but she forced herself to stay calm. Probably just a power surge, she muttered to herself, though she couldn't shake the growing feeling of unease. She decided to check the circuit breaker in the basement, just to be sure everything was okay. Grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, Sarah made her way to the basement door. As she opened it, a cold draft rushed up from the darkness below, making her shiver. The basement had always been the creepiest part of the house. The narrow, steep stairs descended into a dimly lit, cluttered space filled with old boxes, tools, and forgotten items. Sarah rarely went down there, only when absolutely necessary. The flashlight beam cut through the thick darkness as Sarah cautiously made her way down the creaking steps. The further she descended, the colder it seemed to get. Her breath became visible in the air, forming small puffs of mist. She reached the bottom and walked over to the circuit breaker, feeling around the dusty panel. Everything seemed in order. No tripped switches, no signs of malfunction. Just as she was about to turn back, she heard something. A faint, almost imperceptible noise. A soft, shuffling sound like someone moving through the cluttered basement. Sarah froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She scanned the room with her flashlight, but the beam only revealed more shadows. "Hello?" she called out, her voice shaky. "Is anyone there?" No response. The basement was silent again, except for the sound of her own breathing. Sarah tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination, but the unease was growing stronger, gnawing at the edges of her mind. She quickly ascended the stairs, eager to get out of the basement and back into the relative safety of the living room. As she reached the top, she pulled the basement door shut with a firm click, locking it for good measure. Her hands were trembling as she leaned against the door, trying to steady her breath. Back in the living room, Sarah tried to shake off the encounter. She settled back on the couch, turning up the volume on the TV in an attempt to drown out her lingering fear. But the strange occurrences didn't stop. The lights flickered again, more violently this time, and the TV screen went black. Panic started to grip her. Something was wrong, very wrong. She grabbed her phone, intending to call a friend or the police, but the screen was unresponsive. It wouldn't turn on, as if the battery had suddenly died. But she knew it was fully charged just minutes ago. Then came the sound, a loud thud from upstairs. Sarah's head snapped toward the ceiling. The sound was unmistakable, footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving across the floor above her. Her mind raced. Emily was at camp, No one else was supposed to be in the house. Fear rooted her to the spot, her heart hammering in her chest. She wanted to run, to get out of the house, but her legs felt like they were made of lead. The footsteps continued, slow and steady, moving down the hallway above. Whoever, or whatever it was, they were making their way toward the stairs. Sarah forced herself to move, quietly slipping off the couch and heading toward the front door. But as she reached for the doorknob, she heard the sound she dreaded most, the creak of the first stair. Someone was coming down. Her breath caught in her throat as she slowly turned to face the staircase. The house was dark. Only the faint moonlight filtering through the windows provided any illumination. She could barely make out the top of the stairs, but she knew something was there. She could feel it. The creaking continued, each step bringing the unseen presence closer to the ground floor. Sarah's mind screamed at her to run, to flee the house, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the staircase. Then, suddenly, the creaking stopped. The house fell into an oppressive silence. Sarah held her breath, listening intently, but there was nothing. No movement, no sound. It was as if whatever had been on the stairs had simply vanished. Summoning every ounce of courage, Sarah took a cautious step forward. She needed to see what was there, to know what she was dealing with. She moved closer to the stairs, the silence pressing down on her like a weight. When she reached the base of the staircase, she peered up into the darkness. Nothing. The stairs were empty. Relief started to flood through her, but it was short-lived. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Something was behind her. She spun around, her heart leaping into her throat, but there was no one there. The living room was empty, just as she had left it. But the feeling of being watched was overwhelming, almost suffocating. Sarah backed away slowly, her instincts screaming that she needed to leave the house immediately. As she reached the front door, she fumbled with the lock, her shaking hands making it difficult to turn the key. Just as she managed to unlock it, a chilling whisper filled the air, coming from right behind her. Sarah. She froze, her blood running cold. The voice was soft, barely more than a breath, but it was unmistakable. Someone, or something, had spoken her name. She didn't wait to find out who or what it was. With a burst of adrenaline, Sarah yanked the door open and bolted outside, not stopping until she was halfway down the street. She didn't look back, didn't dare to see if anything was following her. When she finally reached a neighbor's house, she pounded on the door, desperate for help. The elderly couple who lived there were startled to see her so distraught, but quickly let her in. They called the police, and Sarah tried to explain what had happened, though her words were jumbled and frantic. The police arrived within minutes and searched Sarah's house from top to bottom. They found no signs of an intruder, no evidence of anyone else being there. But when they checked the basement, they discovered something chilling. The dust-covered floor had clear footprints, leading from the far corner of the basement to the stairs. But the strangest part was that the prints didn't match Sarah's shoes, or anyone else's. They were larger, heavier, like those of a man. The officers couldn't explain it, and neither could Sarah. But she knew, deep down, that something unexplainable had happened in that house. Something had been in there with her, something that knew her name, and it wasn't human. Sarah never spent another night in that house. She moved in with her sister temporarily, unable to face the memories of that terrifying night. The house remained empty for months, and soon it was put up for sale. But the new owners never stayed long. Strange occurrences, whispers in the night, and the feeling of being watched drove them away one by one. The house at the edge of the quiet suburban neighborhood soon gained a reputation, a place where something unseen lingered, waiting in the darkness. And to this day, no one who spends a night there leaves unchanged. For Sarah, the memory of that night will haunt her forever. A reminder that sometimes the things that go bump in the night are all too real.